Kyle and Chris.
It was like timed really well.
That's how I sync the audio back up when the audio doesn't record properly and I have to go and grab the audio and put it back over the video file and line it up. I use that little motion of mine with the intro music. That's how I line it up.
Yeah. I just meant that what I thought was timed well was you said with Kyle and Chris, and you brought me up.
Boom.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
that
was mostly on purpose.
There's some like production value going on.
Yeah,
there.
I'm disappointed you can't see the logo because of the way this thing is tilted. Let me just now
logos.
Can you see me? Because I gotta come over here. See, now you can see it, guys. All right, welcome back, one and all, to another episode of the Two Tongues Podcast. Where today it's not me by myself. I'm joined by my best bud, Kyle.
And co-host of the show, Kyle.
What's up, man?
Not much, hanging in there. Yeah, ready to get one in the books.
We just talked to our good friend Ross.
Yep, it was a delightful little chat.
You guys might remember him from an episode of the podcast entitled
The Dandelion Trust.
The Dandelion Trust, yes, indeed. So if you're looking for a terrific Scottish accent, a good-looking bald fellow with a beard to listen to, check out the Dandelion Trust. What a guy.
Just a revelation. Ross is,
Oh, absolutely, man. Obviously the audience didn't hear our conversation with Ross, but one of the things that he said when we were catching up was something interesting and intriguing about, how I don't know how to describe it. Ross has got a sort of artistic quality. What I mean by that is like open thinking. And some of those people who are super, super open are super, super out there, but Ross rides that line really well.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he's open to is this idea of energy. And some people are okay with that. And some people take that way too far. And some people just reject that right away. I feel like I'm one of the latter people. But as I get older, I have to sort of accept there is such a thing as energy. And not just in the way of like force equals mass times acceleration, not in a physics sort of way, but energy in terms of personality, energy in terms of consciousness. And people have a different energy about them. And Ross has got a terrific energy, man. That guy's like, the kind of guy that's like, it's fun to be around. Mm-hmm. It's like when you're around Ross, you're having a good time.
Yep.
He's like, got this enthusiasm that makes you more enthusiastic about the world that if he wasn't there being enthusiastic about, you'd probably just, take it like any other day.
Yeah.
And people respond to him. Like, pretty ladies are talking to him and you're just like, it's just fun to be around.
Yep.
And he says to us that he feels like he's been giving that away and that maybe it's not good that he just gives it away, to strangers or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, just kind of struck me as like, I wasn't sure how to digest that.
Yeah. I would say that you are more like Ross than I am. I am, at a certain point in my life, it was fairly young. I'm fucking old. It's been a while since I've been this way, but I used to be much more open-going. You know what I mean?
I was gonna let it slide, but go ahead.
Yeah. But then I kind of like shut that down a little bit. And I don't know, like, there is something nice about, people make a big deal about only giving your like physical, at the physical aspect of your relationship to one person.
Yeah.
Like cheating is a big deal, and it is. I'm not saying that it's not, but people like harp on that. But there is something about having like an emotional or an energy that you maintain for just one person too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's something to that.
So you're right about that, and in some sense, I completely agree with you. But I never made the connection between the type of like there's a certain person I am to my wife only, and as it should be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But to be frank, I'm a certain person to you that I'm to nobody else. Yeah, and that's the truth. Even other really good friends like Matthew, I'm not exactly the same. Maybe I am, but. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. I think that there's like a difference though between how you are with your wife, and obviously you have sex with your wife, so that's like that's back to the physical aspect of it. But to the to the energy, emotional aspect of it, there is a way that you are with your wife that you would never be with me, and
Yes.
you would never be with Matthew, and you would never be with anybody but your wife.
Yes.
So that there's some kind of like distinction there.
You know what I think it is? That like the thing that's different about that type of intimacy than, like, let's say a girlfriend that I had when I was younger. It's the vulnerability thing.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I was
secondhand serenade style.
When I was younger, I was incapable of being vulnerable in the same way. Because I was too concerned about looking dumb or sounding dumb or being embarrassed or something. And that's still something I struggle with. Like it's a real demon of mine. But with her, I've had to get over that. It's like, you have to, right? You live together through thick and thin.
You're just not going to say anything.
Right.
Because if you don't say anything, the only way to not sound dumb occasionally is to just not say anything.
Yep.
And maybe I should do more of that sometimes.
And so there's a level of openness and vulnerability with my wife that I think is unique to her. Like there's not even somebody I've known my whole life. There's things that Jessica knows that you don't know.
Yep.
There's things that she doesn't know.
Sure.
But just don't tell her that.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, don't tell her that. It's between us. All right.
Yeah. No, I get that. I've had that type of a relationship before. And yeah, I feel like personally, I tend to be, we've talked about this on the podcast, kind of prickly, like I'm not, I'm not like concerned with being nice all the time to people, like I generally like to think of myself as a kind person, but I don't like go out of my way to be like real, like warm and soft with everyone all the time,
Yeah.
I'm happy to just like not really talk to people. Like I said, I'm very introverted. And if I do talk to people, like I'm just kind of like a business, like let's get this interaction done with,
Yeah.
But with girlfriends that I've had in the past, it's like I'm a completely different person. I want to give that to them. Like I have that to offer them, and I don't really offer it to a ton of other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, I don't mean that I'm like going around like being a huge asshole to everyone, but I am a lot less like Ross. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe I could be more like that, but
There's something to be said about balance.
Yeah. I don't really feel that unhappy with the way that I am, though.
No.
I'm pretty, I feel unhappy with the way that I am in many regards, but not necessarily that. That doesn't really bother me.
Well, you're one of my very favorite people, Kyle. So there's that. But I do think there's something interesting about this idea of not, when I was taking sales training, one of the little things they would say is don't spill your candy in the lobby. That was one of the expressions. It's like, if you're trying to sell something, don't run out there and throw all the information you have at somebody, because when you start out in sales, that's kind of what you want to do. Yeah. You're just not prepared for that conversation at all. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't spill your candy in the lobby. There's something about that that's interesting in terms of like your energy and your personality. It's like, I'm not going to display that to everybody. I'm not going to offer it for free. If you want to know the genuine me, if you want to get, past the just preliminary surface level, there's something valuable there. And because it's valuable, it's not free. You have to earn it somehow. And I never really considered that until Ross said it a few minutes ago. And that's why I brought it up again, because I'm thinking about it. Because I don't disagree with that idea, but I guess I always had this contrary thought too, is like, be genuine, be authentic, be yourself, put yourself out there as you are. Don't try to be somebody you're not. And that kind of means wear your heart on your sleeve, wear your personality on your sleeve, exude the energy that you are unapologetically. And if people like it, the good. If they don't, fuck them.
Yeah.
So those are kind of contrary things. It's like, do I have to put a cloak over that glow? Do I have to put that candle under a bushel? Is that what they said in the song?
Yeah.
Hide it under a bushel.
They say no.
I'm going to let it shine.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I don't know. I feel like that reserving that Ross was talking about, that doesn't necessarily mean not being genuine, you know? Um, because you can still be genuine with someone and not be like dumping your energy into them, you know?
Yeah. You can be yourself without revealing your full splendor.
Yeah.
There was a myth, a Greek myth I was reading about when I did the episode on Dionysus, where this is how Hera tricks Simile into killing herself, basically, because Simile is immortal. She has sex with Zeus. Obviously, Zeus's wife is not happy about it. So how she gets her revenge is she tells Simile, she pretends to be Simile's nurse and starts planting doubt in her mind that this guy that she's been sleeping with that's telling her he's Zeus might not be Zeus at all, but just somebody trying to fuck. And you might want to ask him to prove it. So she asks him to prove it by asking Zeus if he would give her whatever she asked. He says yes. So now it's locked in. Then he asks her something that he can't refuse now, but he wants to refuse. She says, I want you to reveal yourself to me in your full splendor. Mm. So he leaves the room and he comes back in his full splendor, and she immediately is dead, right? She beholds his splendor and she's dead. And that's sort of the analogy that we're bringing up here. You can be yourself without revealing yourself as Zeus in your full splendor.
Personally, that's why I reserve it. You know? Like, I don't want to blow these bitches apart.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That makes me think of like God in the Old Testament. You know, people
exactly.
What they went up on the mountain, and when he did like kind of reveal his full splendor to them, they came back down and they were like tanned. You know, like they'd been exposed to like radiation or something like that. You know,
what I remember is various places in the Bible where a person is confronted with God, and it says something like they had to cast their countenance to the ground, right? Like they couldn't even look at him, you know? Yeah. And it wasn't because it hurt their eyes. It was because it was going to steal their soul. Like they couldn't look at God, you know?
Yeah.
I like reading those old myths, man.
Yeah. It's interesting for sure. Some cool stuff.
There is some cool stuff. I was listening to I found this really stupid YouTube channel. I shouldn't say it's stupid because I really enjoyed it, but it's like an oversimplification of an entire culture's mythology in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by stupid. Like it's just giving you a really high level. And I listened to one on the Egyptian mythology, and it was fucking cool, man. When they introduced Amun, I want to do a podcast on this, so I don't want to like just spill the candy in the lobby. Yeah. But Amun means the hidden one. His name is the hidden one.
Okay.
And he was one of these most ancient gods in Egypt, and he was a high god, so he was like the king of the gods.
Yeah.
And the thing about him being the hidden one is that he was literally invisible. You couldn't see him, but he was the thing that was in everything. Right? He's the thing in you that makes you alive, the thing in the world that makes it exist.
I see why you like this.
You see what I'm talking about? The high god was the hidden one, the thing that you can't observe but is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I just got chills up my arms. I'm like, that is such a spot on like model for God and the way I think about it. So I'm going to do an episode on Amun, I think.
Amun.
And then you know how Amun gets combined with Ra down the line, he becomes Amun Ra. And even that explanation is so fucking Jungian. I love it because Amun is the hidden one and Ra is the sun. So Ra is the thing that God is that's visible and tangible, the immanent God in the world. And then the other half of God is the hidden one, the God that's not in the world, but they're one God, right? It's so cool, man. That's the Ouroboros. That's so good, man. I'm going to do an episode on that.
Nice.
It's coming.
The Ouroboros.
Yep.
I forget what I was going to say.
I want to get an Ouroboros tattoo.
Oh, yeah?
And the only reason
Where at?
Tramp stamp.
Nice.
No. Even better. Even better. Let's do it Usher style around my belly button.
Oh, sweet.
The only reason I say
that
that
you should get a tramp stamp that like wraps all the way around, around your belly button.
Oh God. I would do that for $10,000. So if anybody in the audience wants to front that, I will get a tattoo all the way around my love handles that turns into an Ouroboros around my belly button. Anyway, the only reason that the Ouroboros might be worth a tattoo on me is because it has two significances. One is the religious one, and the second one is from the Never-Ending Story.
Oh yeah,
you know, the Orin or whatever it's called. That's twisted snake. That's an Ouroboros, man. I never knew that, and I always loved that movie. And everything's just comes full circle, man. It's like something I saw when I was 8 has all this new meaning now that I'm almost 40.
Yeah, that is cool.
Life,
Never-Ending Story.
They're remaking that, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about it. I'm excited about it, but I want to not be, because every time I get disappointed, man.
Yeah. The last movie I saw I was not disappointed in was Nosferatu. So that was I feel like I should probably not go see a movie for a while, you know?
It was that good?
Well, I just feel like I want to like stay batting 1,000. I want to wait for another one that I'm like pretty sure is going to be good. But yeah, Nosferatu was great. That was
Eggers or whatever his name is.
Robert Eggers.
Eggers, yeah. Okay. I definitely want to see that, but I'll probably wait till I can buy it.
I mean, I don't want to like, you know, like overblow it or anything, but one of the better movies I've seen, like probably ever.
I'm gonna wait till it comes out on VHS so I can go rent it at Hollywood Video.
Nice. Put it in your tape rewinder.
No, I don't have a tape rewinder. I have to use my actual VCR. It takes forever that way. You know, you guys remember that?
I wonder how many of the audience do remember that.
It's a good question.
We can see on that app, it gives you the age range.
Oh, does it really? Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Of your audience. I think most of them are a little bit younger than us. Not that we have like a huge audience or anything, but the ones that do, I think they skew a little bit younger than us.
Yeah. Couple hundred people. Not many. A couple hundred people. I wish it was like more.
Thousands.
Tell your friends, folks. What else you got, Kyle?
I don't know. I think the one thing that's most freshly in my mind is the fact that Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor of Ohio.
What?
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, he announced the other day that he's his candidacy for governor of Ohio.
When is that election? 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years.
Okay. So he's going to be Doge and then he's going to be governor. That's fucking cool. I hope he does.
I don't know how involved he's going to be with Doge.
Really?
I mean, it seems like
that's how they sold it. Vivek.
Yeah. Well, it seems like since that Americans are lazy and stupid tweet, he's like been out of the public eye, and I'm just not sure. It seems like he might have fucked up, you know, which I think is good on some level.
Vivek tweeted that Americans are lazy and stupid.
Yeah, and in regards to the H-1B visa thing, you know, he's like,
okay.
Yeah, it's like I understand that a lot of Americans have been anti what's the word I'm looking for? Meritocracy, that kind of thing. But that's not all Americans, and you should watch how you talk about all Americans, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. However, you remember we were just having this conversation with Ross, and he said the same thing about what it's like in the UK. Nobody wants to work.
Yeah.
I think that's true here too, man. Nobody wants to work.
I want to work.
Yeah. I'm not saying everybody. You're right about that. And you don't want to overgeneralize. That's a fucking mistake. PR mistake.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a cultural change that I don't know. I don't want to say it all came from COVID, but I think that was a pretty substantial like pivot point for that, the work from home stuff. And, you know, I mean, any increase in government employees is statistically a giant waste.
Yeah.
You know, especially on the federal level, especially in today's day and age. That's what Doge is all about. That's what it's supposed to be addressing. But I do think that there is, you know, I don't know, man. I hate to, as I'm getting older, I try not to, that's not true. I do anyway, but I try to like walk back statements that are that forward. Like, you know, everybody's lazy. Nobody wants to work. There's something about that is true, but it's not like it's applies universally.
Yeah.
I don't want to overemphasize it.
I think that America is fucked. I think that for quite a while, America has been in bad shape, and America has been on a trajectory to get even worse. And I think that a lot of Americans are fucking beaten down, man. A lot of Americans see themselves going to work, and they see all the taxes coming out of their paycheck, and they see that groceries are getting more expensive, and they see that they're importing tons of immigrants in here to do, jobs. And now they're importing, and now from the guys who are supposed to be on our side are importing immigrants to come in and do like good jobs, like nice jobs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see how it's fucking irritating for sure.
So let me just make sure I understand this argument, because I didn't look into it deeply, but this particular visa here is like a skilled labor, specifically H-1B, a skilled labor kind of thing.
No. I mean, you can have landscapers in on H-1B. It's
really?
Like, yeah. It doesn't have to be like some high level.
But is it like we need 10,000 nuclear physicists and we don't have them? Let's go get them from somewhere else.
10,000 is a lot of nuclear.
But I'm just, is that how it works? Like,
maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
So like, let's say it does. Let's say that's how it works. Part of me wants to say, okay, if there's a need, for immediate need, we need to be able to fill it, or else we have to like delay the growth that we want to foster.
Yeah.
So if we go out and get that labor from elsewhere, then you have a fully vetted person who's coming over here, who's valuable and coming over here for a specific need and reason, not somebody who's coming over here to live a better life, whatever that means and wherever that takes them. So in that respect, I think it makes more sense. But here's where it gets sticky. Let's say we need more nuclear physicists, mm-hmm. and kids going into college, maybe to become a nuclear physicist, 4 years from now, when they graduate, don't have the job that they studied for because they gave it to a couple of Indian fellows they brought over to fill the job 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Now that is a problem.
Yep. It is definitely a problem. It's a problem for me. And I don't know. I have a hard time believing that. Look, I know that like education in America has been slipping. I'm well aware of that. But I also think that America's got a lot of really fucking smart people too. And I think that it would be better to work with what we have and innovate and try to find ways to make it work than it would be to import labor from another place. Historically, that hasn't worked out for us that well.
Yeah. Now, would your mind be in a different place on that if those H1 visas, whatever they're called, those swine flu visas, H1N1 visas, yep. If they were project based, like we need 10,000 nuclear physicists. Once the nuclear plant's developed and everyone's been trained, then you go home. So yeah. you can come here for 4 years and then you have to go home.
Yeah,
and then the kids graduating. Yeah. I have less problems with that.
Yeah.
It's like, what's worth giving citizenship for? How valuable is citizenship?
I also think the companies who bring in H-1B visas, I think that they should have to demonstrate that they did everything they could to hire Americans before they're allowed to bring people in from other. I don't think you should just be allowed to do that.
No, what comes to my mind is like in Saudi Arabia, citizenship's really strictly enforced, and there's like I don't know what the statistics are, but it's like a relatively small percentage of the population that lives there are citizens. And the reason for that is the oil revenue, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. So only the citizens get to share in the oil revenue, but everybody else who's living and working there doesn't. Mm-hmm. I remember, like, I think I want to say this might have been my own dad, but like in the 80s, they were bringing over a bunch of European and US workers to do things in Saudi Arabia that they didn't have the skilled labor for. And I think the story, if I'm remembering correctly, was my own dad was offered a job to drive a truck, like a 16-wheeler in Saudi Arabia. I think when I was little, and it was like 80 grand a year back then, which was like
a bunch of
like 150,000 a year or whatever now. And he didn't do it. But that's what they were doing. So I guess what I'm saying is, why couldn't we import all the labor we want and not give them citizenship.
Yeah.
You get the benefit of living in the greatest country on earth. You get the benefit of having a safe place to live, all the cultural benefits and everything that there is to be an American. You just aren't one, right? You're just not going to vote in the elections, but you can like, and part of me thinks that might be better in some ways.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If the Saudis can do it.
Yeah, the Saudis can do it. We can figure it out. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, you say like, as long as we don't make them citizens, why can't we bring in as much labor as we want to? Because that still comes at a cost, to Americans who could be having those jobs.
I guess the point I'm making here is why offer them citizenship at all?
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, getting a visa doesn't mean that you're a citizen, it just means that you're here for like an extended stay.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, maybe there's like a path to citizenship with a visa. Maybe it's like easier or something. Yeah, I have no idea.
Probably that would stand to reason.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it should, but I think it should be like, when ancient Rome was around, being a citizen of Rome like meant something. It was like, really, if you were a citizen of Rome, you were a cut above the people who weren't. And I think a lot of people like hear that and they have some kind of a problem with that. They think there's some kind of level of what's the word I'm looking for? Like chauvinism, and there is. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that being American should mean something. It should matter. It
should.
And if you do get the nod, that's like life changing.
See, this is related to something we were talking to Ross about a little bit ago. Remember when I was talking about how when we were growing up, we were raised to be proud to be American, to be proud of our history and our heritage, to be proud of the roles we played in foreign wars, all that stuff, Yeah. If it wasn't for us, I'd be speaking German or something. We have a certain pride, and all that's been degraded. It's not taught anymore. We don't have the same level of indoctrination, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but it definitely resulted in a serious diminishment of patriotism. People are far more likely to be what's the word I'm looking for?
Cynical.
Yeah. But to feel
anti-patriotic,
to feel some sort of guilt that they're American, rather than being proud to be American. Why am I on this particular track? I've got to reel myself in here. Where did we start here?
You're talking about Elon and Vivek and immigration, and
I started talking about being proud. I part of it I remember. Part of it had to do with something I saw or read about, like getting scolded for people who want others to speak English in the United States. So if you have that opinion, like, if you come to this country, we speak English in this country, you should fucking speak English. And if you don't, that's rude, something like that. And that idea now is like far less acceptable and common as it used to be. But at the same time, it is our national language. We have only one national language.
Call me crazy, but I think that kind of stuff is becoming more popular.
What kind of stuff?
Like saying you need to fucking speak English, being less tolerant of people coming here, taking a job that could have been an American person's, coming to that job, being on their fucking phone on a WhatsApp call literally all day, 8 hours a day on the phone with their people back home, not making any effort to assimilate or develop relationships with the people that they work with, taking the money from the paycheck that they get and shipping our currency out of our country to work for other countries. Yeah. All of that is fucked.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at. It's like the idea that, like, well, as an example, we live in a very northerly state. There's not very many states more northerly than ours. And we're a long, long way away from any Spanish-speaking country is my point. And I hear Spanish commercials more than I've ever heard in my life. In fact, I never heard one ever in my whole life until a decade ago. And now it's about a third of the commercials I hear are not in English. Yeah. And the reason that this makes my eyebrow raise so much is because we're being told simultaneously that we should be embracing that kind of diversity, that it only makes us more rich and valuable. And if we're priding ourselves in being intelligent Americans, should we put a little effort into learning another language like they do in Europe anyway? It's like that kind of thing. It's like, shame on you. But at the same time, that insistence that we not all speak the same language does nothing but divide us in a way that is insidious. Because what you're saying is, I don't even want one part of the population to know what the other one thinks or says. You're going to be invisible to me, and I'm not going to be able to understand where your head is or what you want or what is wrong, because we can't communicate with each other. And that is the same situation that we see with the decline of religion. We don't have a language to unite us. We don't have a culture to unite us anymore because we're this multicultural world now, and we don't have a religion to unite us. So we have nothing to unify us. And this idea of severing the language is far more dangerous in that regard than I ever realized up until basically now.
Yeah.
It's really insidious because, listen, if I can't say to you that we have a common enemy, and we can then become united under the thing that we share, like we're all Christians or we're all American. Well, if a part of the population feels guilt and disgust with the association of their identity with being American, I can't trust them. I can't trust them to back me up. And why would I want to back them up? And if I can't communicate with them, it's even worse. And if I don't have the highest governing principle, that moral center that we call our religion, if we don't share that in common, then we're not a country, and citizenship means shit. And we're on a slow train to demise. And that's what's happening bit by bit by bit in the name of being less white and more diverse. It's like, what the fuck do you mean? We also need to be something that we all are. We have to have something in common that unites us, that will allow us to get over the fact that we have a different religion or we have a different shade of fucking skin color. So that's the level of seriousness that I think having commercials in Spanish is. And there's not one single lefty that's not going to sneer and laugh hysterically at that. And that's a lack of imagination on their part. What do you think?
I think that all of that stuff that you talked about, like us being disconnected from, personally, I think that that's been done intentionally.
Clearly.
And there's there's a word that all the big scary racists on the internet use. They say deracination, like ripping something up by its roots, like cutting away all of the things that like root something to where it came from, just like tearing it up. Now it's like free floating. It's like, it just blows away in the wind.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what's been done. Think about it. If you're listening right now, think about what kind of roots you have, symbolically, metaphorically, that connect you to the land you live on, to the family you have, the people around you, the community, the government. What kind of roots do you have? And compare that to what the roots your grandparents had.
Yeah.
You see the difference? It's a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, now everything that rooted your grandparents in, you despise. You think that it's bad. You're embarrassed about it.
And why would you teach your kids to assimilate, to become American? If you come here for the better life, to live in the better place with the opportunity, and yet you're not going to teach your kids to become American if you despise what it means to be American.
Yeah.
And if half the Americans around you feel that way.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable, man.
So another problem with that is that, like I said, I believe that has been done intentionally. And for it to be done intentionally implies that there are people, groups of people, various groups of people. I'm not like putting it on one group or anything, but people who have, there's some benefit for that to happen. And particularly with the native, well, I know native is controversial, but I'm talking about European people who came over and settled the Americas. There's a particular reason why those people are the most attacked. And I think that a lot of the immigrants who come over, they're not willing to let go of their roots. They want to bring their roots. You know what I mean? They hold on to their religion. They hold on to their language. They don't come over here and learn English. And I just feel like there's something I just don't understand, like the targeted aspect of it. I mean, I guess I do understand it, but it just seems I can't help but notice it. It's only like one portion of the people who have to be ashamed of their language, who have to be ashamed of the fact that they want people to speak their language and want people to have a religion or a moral code that is somewhat similar to theirs.
It's a strange thing. That word punching down that was invented a couple of years ago. It's like you shouldn't tell a joke about somebody that's like lower on the socioeconomic hierarchy than you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't punch down. Go punch up all you want, but never punch down. Where was I going with this? Shit.
Don't be a bully.
I was going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what it was. Only in a culture that has that mentality could you have minorities, because that's what they claim to be in this identity politics charade. You only in this situation would you have a minority that could push around the majority and say things like, we need to defeat whiteness in a white culture.
Yeah.
Like what I'm saying is, you have to be so tolerant and so liberal to allow that to happen in your society. In a completely white dominated society by the numbers and by the any measurement of power or authority or whatever it is, and we can allow people to riot and to go on the news and say things like, we needed to kill, defeat whiteness, destroy whiteness. In what other world would a minority group be able to say something like that and not immediately suffer the consequences? Yeah. Right? Like, can you imagine going to Rome in the Middle Ages and I'm trying to think of a good example, an analogy here. Going to Rome and saying that Christianity, like trying to make Rome Muslim in the Middle Ages.
Well, the Muslims, they were into that.
Yeah, but not in Rome. They weren't.
Yeah.
To show up in Rome and say down with the Pope.
Yeah.
It's like you would get smashed. Yeah. In what world, in what time could what's happening now happen?
Yeah,
that says something.
Go ahead.
It says something about, I don't know whether it's good or bad, but it says something about American culture, modern American culture.
Yeah. Back then, you would have to do it. If you were gonna take Rome and force it to be Muslim, you would have to do it by force. You'd have to invade Rome, win a battle against them, and be like, "This is a Muslim area now."
Yeah.
And they did that in other places that were not Rome. You
Yep.
know, Spain had a really bad go of it there for a while. But now, they don't have to do it violently. They bring their ideologies here, and they're allowed to just spout off at the mouth all they want to.
Right.
And nobody puts them in their place. And if you say something like put them in their place, that's a real problem.
That's it.
But I think we should put them in their place.
Well, yes, in the sense that we have freedom of speech, which is important and allows the first part of what you just said, them to come over here and spout off of their mouth whatever they want. Yeah. And I support that. But there isn't the reaction to that that's natural. Something is preventing the natural reaction. If you go around punching somebody that's bigger than you, like this, I don't know if you can remember an example of growing up. We were taught never to hit a girl. It was not allowed. It didn't matter what they were doing to you. If they're putting their hands on you, it was not socially acceptable. It wasn't morally acceptable. It couldn't happen. If you were a man, you just couldn't do it. If you did it, you were in big fucking trouble. It wasn't acceptable. It wasn't allowed. but you can go around getting punched over and over again, slapped and yelled at over and over again by a woman. At some point, you have to expect retaliation, you know? And that's what's happening here. You have minority groups that are walking around slapping the dragon over and over and over again. And because of his good nature, nothing happens. But that is the stupidest thing, you know? And it's not respectful by a long shot. It's not something it's not even feasible that sort of behavior is going to give you a place that is a sustainable, welcome home for you. You know, it's a ticking time bomb. And that is the scariest part. There should be the counter reaction. There should be somebody putting them in their place. If you say some crazy shit, you should get put in your place.
What does that mean? Put them in their place.
Demonstrate to all watching that what they've said or done is unacceptable or illogical or whatever. You can't get away with it. If it's one-sided, you can get away with it. Yeah. But we need brave people to show other people the rest of the picture.
Yeah.
This is why bullies, this is related to the idea that we used to have bullies. It was a normal part of life. And then at some point in our childhood, they had a campaign against it. And by this day and age, it's you know, far less of a let's say problem in K through 12 education. But as a consequence, you don't have somebody telling these these kids that are producing antisocial behaviors.
Fucking
you're not being put in your place, which is supposed to show you, hey, reality expects this from you. That's what a bully is doing. I'm not giving a pass to bullies, entirely. I'm just saying that they serve a social function.
Yeah.
In
like white blood cells.
In maintaining, I want to say normality, but what's the word that they would use? Like, what's the word they use? Normative. That's the word they use. Bullies enforced normativity.
Yeah. I don't know, the way that you like lay that out there. I wonder, like, again, what does it mean to put, oh, you could ask me for that now. What does it mean to put someone in their place? And I feel like the way, as bad as things are, you know, like Andrew Wilson is not going to save the country by debating, you know, it's not going to happen. It might help. It might help change hearts and minds, but it's not that is not going to happen quickly enough. If we leave it to that, we're going to be in trouble. So in my mind, it needs to be more direct. And I feel like you might think that it is a violation of the First Amendment. And I just really am not that concerned with that. I don't think it is.
Give me a more specific example.
So when we were talking earlier, we were talking about, you were saying that there's a bunch of, like, Asian is what they call it, but like Middle Eastern Muslim mayors over in the UK.
Yeah.
That should never, ever be allowed to happen, ever. You cannot hold, I'm sorry, you can't hold positions of that kind of power if you're not a natural born citizen.
Do you remember hearing about the resistance that JFK had when he was running for president? Because
he's Catholic.
Because he was Catholic.
Yeah.
And the people in the United States were literally concerned that the Pope might have undue political influence over the president of the United States because he happened to be a Catholic. Now, I don't hear that kind of resistance anymore, but imagine how much worse that is if you have a Muslim mayor, especially when these are Wahhabi Muslims who believe almost, and I have never seen one that disagrees with this, like debating or arguing anybody, that Muslims have the religious duty and responsibility to increase in number wherever they go, to become the majority, and then force the conversion to Islam. Yeah. That is a religious duty that they have. And what they've done in the UK is allow them to be elected in political office. Well, there's no question that those Wahhabis are far more aligned with their political responsibilities and duties than they are with their, governmental ones. Their religious duties rather than governmental ones. You know, it's so dangerous.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, let's say, one of these H-1B visas that we've got incoming. Let's say that one of them gets his visa, he becomes an upstanding citizen eventually, and he wants to run for mayor. No, I'm sorry. Like, I don't think that should be allowed. I don't think, and we've talked about this before, I don't think you should be allowed to be a citizen of another country. And not just to hold office. I don't think you should be allowed to be a dual citizen. None of that.
Yeah.
If you want to come here and be an American, it's time to be an American. It's not time to be, Swahili or Saudi Arabian or Pakistani or Indian. You're an American now, and you have to give that up.
I do think it's hard to argue that somebody with dual citizenship may have divided loyalties. I mean, like, any reasonable person would say that's a possibility.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to make it as safe and secure as possible, you would not allow someone with dual citizenship to be in a position of political power.
Yeah.
I have a hard time arguing against that.
Yeah, I think that even voting is a position of too much political power.
That's an interesting point. Right. If I am imagine that I am a dual citizen. I mean, a good example of this into this day and age might be, let's say I'm a dual Russian or dual Israeli citizen or dual Ukrainian citizen or something like that.
Yeah.
Should I have the power to contribute to the decisions that are made in American politics? If I could hypothetically sabotage in whatever way that I want the American system and go move back to Ukraine or go move back to Israel?
Yeah.
Like, why would you even allow that?
Yeah. I don't know, man.
So if you want to be an American, a voting American, should you have to forfeit your citizenship elsewhere? I mean, I think that there's a reasonable discussion to be had around that.
Yeah. I am like pretty comfortable saying that if you weren't born in America, that you don't get to vote. Like, I'm pretty, like I'm pretty good with that.
Yeah.
I'm good with like more than that. I'm good with like, I'm good with standards that would maybe not allow me to vote. Like, I think that less people should be voting.
I agree. And we've talked about this before, but it's been a while. I always bring up those MTV Get Out and Vote campaigns that they've been doing since we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
What they're doing is encouraging young people to vote, and they're going to vote Democrat. Yeah. So you're encouraging young people to vote Democrat who have absolutely no life experience to validate their political decisions, and also are kids and don't give a shit and aren't going to research it and are so gullible and easily persuaded. Allowing children to vote is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Terrible idea.
Yep. And an 18-year-old is a child.
And the fact that something Taylor Swift says could influence the vote by millions is proof. That's case in point. That is ridiculous. It shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
So how do you get around that? Well, you could make it. In the old days, they said, well, if you were a landowner, you probably had the responsibility and the resources and the wherewithal to have a stake at least and be intelligent enough to contribute something. That's not something we can go back to, but that I understand the logic behind it.
Wait, what? I'm sorry. What is something we can't go back to?
Limiting voting to only landowners.
Why? Why couldn't we go back to that?
Because there's only a small portion of the population that's landowners, and
exactly.
but in a representative democracy, you're going to have trouble passing that one.
Yeah, I guess.
But whether is that even the best metric though? Like when I was younger,
it's a pretty good one.
When I was younger, I used to think, well, this is not a new idea, but something like, if I want to become a citizen of the United States, I have to pass a citizenship exam. Why should not every American who wishes to vote be forced to take that exam? If you can't pass that exam in English, you can't vote.
Yeah.
I have a hard time arguing against that either.
Yeah. Well, it's discriminatory, like some people aren't smart enough to be able to read the test,
Yep.
But they should still be able to vote.
Yep. See, that's where we have to take back the meaning of that word discriminatory.
Yeah. Yeah.
We want to discriminate.
Yeah,
And
discrimination is natural.
absolutely. If you didn't discriminate,
You'd be dead.
yeah, would you not want to discriminate between what you decide to eat? Like
Yeah, I can eat this.
a shoelace is just as good as a porterhouse.
Yeah, I can eat this portobello mushroom, this delicious sauteed portobello mushroom, or I can eat this poisonous mushroom. You know,
Don't discriminate.
Don't discriminate. Yeah.
Jesus, Kyle.
Yep. A lot of this stuff we're talking about is making me think of that guy James Lindsay.
Yeah,
And like a lot of this stuff that he's pushing this woke right idea.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
And I'm just gonna I mean, not that James Lindsay's gonna listen to this or anybody's gonna fucking hear it, but I can't fucking stand James Lindsay. I think that he is. I don't know if he's paid. I don't know if he's like an agent of somebody. That would not surprise me at all. Or if he's just like an insidious, stupid person. You know, like I don't think that James Lindsay is literally like 85 IQ stupid.
No, he's a smart guy.
Yeah, but I think that he lacks common sense. I think that he's like ideologically possessed. He's classically liberally ideologically possessed. And he wants to say that the right, the more extreme side of the right, is woke because they care about things like identity more than the classical liberals who just believe that identity doesn't matter at all, which is on its face the most stupid fucking thing I've ever heard. Okay, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with why this like deracination is targeted at certain one particular group. It's like, why is it okay for all of the other people to to attack and deracinate and do everything they can to supplant white people, white heritage Americans. But when white people are like, they see this happening to them, they're not allowed to be like, what the fuck? You know, now I'm woke.
So I like James Lindsay's opposition to communism. I think it's admirable, and
I think it's boring, and like everybody's fucking against communism, dude. Like, it's not cool or impressive to be against communism anymore.
But what he did that I liked, although I didn't agree with all of it, is he revealed how people like Marx and Hegel were religious.
Yeah.
Their ideology was a religious ideology, and he basically highlighted how the communist manipulation of language, which is a leftist move, but the communists are good at it. That's something that appeared in ancient. It appeared in Hegel, but also in ancient religious concepts. So he talks about this whole secret Gnostic paradigm that goes from classical antiquity all the way through the communist movement. Yeah. And I think that's interesting. I don't agree with it all, but I think it's interesting. So I don't want to brush James Lindsay off entirely. But while you were talking, I had this thing pop in my head about, it was for a while I was telling you I was watching Jesse Peterson.
Jesse Lee Peterson, yeah.
And he had this, he was interviewing this black lady. I can't remember.
Amazing.
I can't remember her deal, but she was talking about basically DEI.
Yeah.
And she was talking about bringing in a more ethnic people.
Mm.
And Jesse Lee Peterson didn't pick up on it. But what she was saying by ethnic people was people that aren't white.
Yeah.
But the implication is that white people don't have any ethnicity. Mm-hmm. And that is something that goes under the radar of these race baiting identity politics people, but especially the black ones. These people believe that white people don't have culture and that we're not different, that we don't have any, that we're all the same. They think we're all the same. It's the same thing that white people would have been criticized for most of American history, for not recognizing that black people have any particular culture, but just kind of throwing them all under the umbrella of black people. It's like Go to Europe and tell me there aren't ethnicities.
Mm.
You know, take a train ride for 3 hours through the fucking Alps and tell me that white people aren't ethnic. You know, go to the Baltic countries and the Slavic countries, right? See their traditional clothes and dances and music and instruments and religion and rituals, and tell me they're not ethnic people different from other white people.
Yeah.
It gets under my skin, man.
Yeah, it's annoying for sure. Yeah, the whole white people don't have culture. It's like white people invented all of the good culture, like the culture that I personally want to be around and enjoy. It's white people culture. I like it a lot. I'm a big fan. And like that's another thing, like that like goes back to the making everyone ashamed of everything. It's like everybody, black people are allowed to be proud to be black, and like a black person saying I love black people is not a problem. Me saying I love white people, and I do, it's a problem for some reason.
I love when Jesse Peterson always asks that question. He always sits there just deadpan. He's like, "Do you love all white people?"
Jesse Lee Peterson he's a gem.
It cracks me up.
Yeah.
Ethnicity. That's the thing, man. Like we live in a place in the United States, which is rare in the sense that there are historical European ethnic communities here, and that they're still populated by people coming here from the homeland. Yeah. So it's not unusual in Cleveland to hear somebody speaking with a Polish accent or something like that. And that's something that I think most white people in the United States aren't accustomed to. Maybe in New York they are, you know, but apart from that, I mean, I think it's easy to think of white people as all one amorphous blob, you know?
Yeah.
And then you bump into someone like we were at a restaurant around the corner, and this guy, I don't remember where he said he was from. He was hitting on my wife. He was like, he was an older dude.
He was like Romanian or
something like that. Eastern European guy. Yeah. I don't know where I was going with that anymore, but point is, man, it's like you encounter someone like that and you're like, oh, okay. There's like a whole range of shit going on with white people that, you know,
that's the thing. The uprooting of, you know, the Americans who have been here the longest, that uprooting has made it to where we are kind of just like an amorphous blob, you know, like a lot of white people in America basically don't have culture, you know, like it's been robbed from us and we've been made to feel ashamed of it. And if you want to do things like wear, you know, lederhosen, which I don't, it's kind of goofy,
or a kilt.
Yeah,
some tartan plaid.
I have a fucking kilt and I will wear that motherfucker. But yeah, like it's like corny or you like explicitly like racial, like you're taking, it's like, again, it's like saying I love white people, I love the heritage that I came from, I'm proud of that. It's like racist, you know, it's like you're not allowed to be proud of that.
Yeah, what you just said is so important. People don't realize this enough. One of the great sins of slavery in the world, and in the United States in particular, and this is something when black people in the United States say it, I can't disagree with them, that they've had their history robbed from them. They've had their culture and their language and their religion robbed from them. And that is true. And it's terrible. It's a terrible loss for them. It makes them feel lost. And I get it. And the reason I get it is because, and this is the lesser known part or lesser accepted part, it is true with white people in the United States, exactly like black people. So if black people who were brought over here specifically from the slave trade were forced to assimilate and their language and religion was taken from them, a couple generations later, they don't know what country in Africa they came from, what tribe they belonged to, what language their history, their ancestors spoke, what food they ate. They know nothing. Do you?
Yeah.
I don't either, dude. The American experiment has robbed white people of their culture in exactly the same way as it's robbed black people of their culture. And in place of it, we have an American culture. And for a while, that was something.
Yeah.
And it was working. Rock and roll and Levi's and, you know, whatever. I don't know. And opportunity, and people were okay with trading their culture for that, or whatever. But the point is, the fact of being robbed of your history and culture is something that in the United States applies to white people exactly the same as black people. And and I don't think black people, but certainly not the ones that are in these identity politics rat race, will ever admit or ever even consider. I don't have any idea what country my ancestors came from, or what language they spoke, or what food they ate, or what religion they had. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't really know what else to add to that.
But this is connected to that whole Asha Locos conversation we had.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know your history, your lineage, then you lose a very significant part of your identity. And those are those roots that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How do you like regrow roots? You know, how do you get replanted?
It's funny, man. I had this lady I used to work with who was from Sweden.
Yeah.
And she married an American like GI, and she came over here. And she was great. I loved her. She was an awesome person. But she found it strange that my wife, whose family came from Finland and Sweden, attaches themselves at all to Swedish culture.
Yeah.
Because to her, like, Sweden is like a nation. You know, it's like, it's weird for European people to see Americans try to like pretend to be Irish. I'm Irish.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, bitch, you've been here for 6-7 generations. You're as Irish as fucking, apple pie.
Yeah.
And but I don't know about that. Like, I don't know if that's a part of the solution to that problem, is like adopting,
like returning to.
Yeah, you say returning, but doesn't it also sort of sound like stealing? Like, if I'm Irish, but I've been an American for 7 generations, then I want to like start carrying a shillelagh
Cultural appropriation.
Right. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. But that's how the Europeans view it. They're like, this is ridiculous. You're not Irish.
No, I think I'm very sympathetic to that. And I've said it before, not on the podcast. Maybe I have on the podcast, but to other people. One thing I've definitely said on the podcast, what?
Oh, Ross is connected. Hey, Ross. Are you on, buddy? I hope he joins. Well, whatever. Maybe he'll join. He's playing around with his computer right now. we were just talking to Ross on this app earlier.
What was I saying?
I don't know. Ross joined the podcast and confused us
all. Oh, yeah. Okay. One thing I definitely have said on the podcast is that I don't particularly appreciate the European, we're all so much better than the stupid Americans. I fucking this shit really irritates me because they're a bunch of fucking retards just like everyone else. I think that there is something to be said for developing an American culture and identity, and like separating from that, because we're so separated from it already that, it's like ingenuine.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that you can't like appreciate that, some of that, and maybe incorporate some of that. Maybe part of the American culture is an appreciation for the cultures that we came from, I think that there's some way to like bring that about. But yeah, I think that we need to be proud to be American. I'm not proud to be Scottish. Oh, Ross is gone.
Yeah.
I'm like majority English and Scottish, and I don't really feel too much pride about that kind of stuff. Maybe a little bit. Like, I look back at the history of the English and the Scottish, and I've got German, and like I do. I look back at that and I'm like, yeah, like it's cool that I came from those people, but I don't really feel much of a connection to those people. I feel much more of a connection to my grandpa, who was born in Kentucky. He was born in Ohio, but spent a lot of time and my grandma, who was born in West Virginia,
my great grandmother was born in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, my family on my mom's grandparent side have been in this country for a long time.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I think that, if we could develop some kind of way to be proud to be American again and not have that harken back to some kind of like old European stock, I think that that would be ideal.
So the part of the resistance to that in today's day and age is the legacy of slavery in the United States that people want to separate themselves from.
Yeah.
And there's something I saw about this that I wanted to bring up to you. I was watching this video on YouTube about the Atlantic slave trade, and it was contrasting it with the Arab, with the slave trade that went on to the east, to the mostly in the Arab world.
Yeah.
And they were showing the numbers of slaves that went to different places.
Yeah.
Over the full course of the Atlantic slave trade. I didn't know this, but in total, this is just from a video I watched on YouTube, so just fact check it all you want. In total, 400,000 African slaves came to America. Like 5 times that much went to Brazil.
Yeah.
5 times that much went to the Caribbean. And all of that combined went to the Arab world.
Yeah.
Only a tiny fraction of all of the African slaves that came out of Africa during that time period, a couple 100-year time period, actually came to the U.S.
Yeah.
We would be, if you took the whole scheme and you come up with a percentage mathematically, the United States was a tiny fraction of the problem.
Yeah.
And we get 100% of the guilt and burden, reparations and all this stuff. And I was completely blown away to realize that such a small percentage of the total amount of slaves actually came here. And the number of people who owned them in the US was a tiny fraction.
Yeah.
So now all white people, even the ones that came here after slavery was abolished, have to carry this guilt for all the slaves that went everywhere in the world, when only a small portion came here and only a tiny fraction of white people here owned them.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how many more went to the Caribbean than mainland America.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. But it makes sense. I think like the sugar cane was there, and like I don't know if it was coffee but definitely the sugar cane.
Yeah.
And that was the rum. That was what they were making rum with and all that.
Yeah. I think, we get a bad rap for a lot of stuff, even though there's a lot that we were like way better on. You know, it's like being a slave in America, in like mainland America, was, you know, you're a slave, so it's not great. But being a slave in like the Caribbean plantations and shit,
yeah,
was like really brutal.
Dude.
You know, like they were like way more brutal. And nobody talks about that. You know, nobody has a problem with that shit.
No.
I mean, I'm sure that some people have a problem with it, but overwhelmingly, it's that the people who didn't bring as many and were a lot nicer to them and ended up getting rid of slavery, they get all of the blame for some reason.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
I wonder how many slaves came here before the founding of the United States, when it was like Great Britain's deal and not ours.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the Caribbean, like all those islands, weren't they owned by like the British and the Dutch and like
various?
I can't remember exactly.
European peoples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder how many of those slaves came over into the U.S. before we were a country.
Yeah. It's a good question. So when we were talking about like the H-1B thing, it's like, if somebody was to get a visa and come over here and work hard and be, you know, they do assimilate, they learn English, they learn they know more about being an American than a lot of natural born American citizens. Are you okay with the idea that like maybe eventually they become citizens or their kids become citizens?
I would depend on the circumstances, but I would suggest that in a time that we're in now, when we expect population decline to continue to ramp up, that it would be intelligent to have a plan for that. Yes. And I think if we're going to have to replace the population to keep things running, we might as well be able to cherry pick.
Sure.
Then just open up the gates. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm less okay with it. I'm not completely opposed to it, but I am less okay with it. But what I'm getting at is we didn't take anybody. People were taken from Africa and brought over here, and they had to be slaves, but eventually they became citizens of the greatest country in the fucking world.
Yep.
So, like this talk of reparations, it's like you've had your reparations. Like I said earlier, being a citizen of Rome used to mean something.
Right.
And being a citizen of America should mean something. And all of these people who are descendants of black slaves, yeah, you're an American citizen now.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Stop bitching.
So like the exchange for your historical bondage, let's say, is that you get to live in a place where your life isn't at daily threat.
Mm-hmm.
You're not dealing with like malaria and wild animals. You have a relatively easy and cheap access to nutrition. I mean, you're right. There's a certain lack of gratitude that is evident in the types of arguments you hear from the people that are asking for reparations. There's a certain arrogance, and there's a certain lack of gratitude.
Yeah.
And I think gratitude is one of the most important qualities a human being can have.
Yeah.
I just personally believe that. So that's a big deal.
Yeah. Okay, that's basically all I wanted to say about that. I think
all right.
I don't want to hear any more I don't want to hear any more reparations talk.
All right, I'm going to show you some Bible verses. You want to look at some Bible verses with me?
The Holy Bibli.
Sacredtext.com. I found three of them that I wrote down.
Yeah.
One of them I wanted to ask you about. It's down here. This is where it says Bible. Excuse me. Hold on. Bear with me. We're going to look at the King James Version because that's the one I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go to Isaiah. He's one of the prophets during that intertestamental period. We're going to go to chapter 45, and we're going to go to verse
Donald Trump.
7.
45.
7.
And 47.
All right. Will you read that for me starting at 7?
To when?
I guess just 7. Read
Okay.
it.
I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. The Lord do all these things. I, the Lord, do all these things.
Yeah, there it is. This came to my attention recently, and I'd never seen it before. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So in Isaiah chapter 47, God says, I form the light and create the darkness. I'm responsible for the light and the darkness. And he says, I make peace and create evil. He's saying God is responsible for the light as well as the dark, for good as well as evil. What do you make of that, man?
Yeah, just kind of without God, nothing is possible, period. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I go with it.
So I think
without the creation, it wouldn't be possible for anything to be evil.
True. So I see a certain Ouroboros reference in here, right? The paradox, the union of opposites, light and dark, good and evil, right? God is saying, I am both. I am responsible for both. But that's something that a lot of Christians would reel from, the idea that God's saying, no, all the evil that you're concerned about came from me, buddy. That's mine too.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. That's kind of like a flippant,
sure.
I don't think that there's one way of interpreting it that is because evil comes from God. Well, you can just be evil, know.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that is not, I feel like, the appropriate interpretation of that.
It's not. But here's where it gets interesting to me. So you know how I would say that I'm God, you're God, we're all God, right? And so God is capable. You and I are capable of doing good or evil. We have free will, which is something only God has, and so we can choose to do good or do evil. And so evil exists in individual human beings and in their hearts. And a lot of times they don't realize it themselves. So you have people doing evil shit, like Adolf Hitler or George Soros or whoever it is. You got people doing evil shit, and they're like embodying it and carrying it out and affecting the world and others. And what do you do about it? Like, you're supposed to be certainly in favor of good over evil, if not have a certain responsibility to fight for it. What do you do when you see somebody embodying evil?
You kill them.
But God is the one responsible. You kill God?
You can't kill God.
But if you're God, can you kill God?
Nope. You're not God. Like, I know that you are God, but you're not God.
Yeah.
So you can't kill God.
Yeah.
Now, could God, like uppercase G God, kill himself? I don't know, man. Like, maybe, but like, yeah, that's my point. It's like, there is a way in which I agree with you that everything is God, but there is a level of God that we can't be and that we'll never be.
True. But the idea that God is such a thing that can carry out evil and perhaps not even appreciate what they're doing or not recognize it for what they're doing. Like, I don't know, like there's lots of different examples you could use war, or you could use abortion or something like that. Somebody might be doing something that's evil.
Yeah.
But God is saying, I'm the thing that can do that.
Yeah.
And then if it's almost like there's like a moral judgment that I'm making against God. I'm not saying that I know what this means or I'm implying anything. I'm just saying, if God can do evil and I'm judging God for doing evil, I'm judging God. That's fucking weird. I'm judging God. I am judging God.
Yeah.
God, you're better than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You know what the word telos is?
Telos. Yes, it's like an end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a purpose.
Purpose, yeah.
I feel like everything that God created, its telos is to be good, is to not be evil. But we have free will and we can choose to be evil. So yeah, I mean, I think that in the sense that we all are manifestations of God somehow, yeah, God is responsible for evil, but that is not
God,
the purpose.
Yeah. Just the idea that God could choose evil is like a strange thing, to consider. And I think that's true. I think that's true somehow.
Yeah, I think that there's something to that. We are God. We are manifestations of God, but there is an aspect of God that we will never be.
Mm-hmm.
That aspect of God that we will never be, I don't think would ever choose evil.
Yeah.
I think that is, whatever that is the purest form of good, truth, beauty, like that's all the things that we should aspire to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's like, sometimes my head gets too full of poetry and I'm afraid I can't even make sense of it if I open my mouth. All right, let me move on to another one. I actually didn't write down what these verses are, so I don't 100% remember what we're getting into, but I want to show you John 17:21 next. John, wait.
Not First John?
Not First John, I guess. Second John?
No. I mean, if it's just John, you want that one.
What? What is this? The book of John, and then down here there's John's?
Yeah.
Explain that to me. What's this?
This is the Gospel of John. These are letters either from or to John. I can't remember.
Wow. My ignorance is on full display. I did not realize there was more than one book of John. I just assumed it was the Gospel. Okay. 17:21. That puts this right around here. 17:21 says this. Oh, well, this is Jesus. He says, neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word, that they may all be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me, that they may all be one in us. So Jesus is saying he's one with God and praying that all humanity will be one with them as one thing. That humanity will be one with God as Jesus is one with God.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, right? Because Jesus is a member of the Trinity, right? Who's supposed to be uniquely God with only two other claims to that throne, the Father and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Now, Jesus is saying he prays that humanity be one with God in the way that Jesus is one with God. What do you make of that?
I don't know, man. I would have to think about it more. I can't, it's like, neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word, that they may all be one, that they all may be one. Yeah, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I don't take anything from it immediately. I would have to like let it sink in a little.
My reservation with this is that all of the cool verses from the Gospels come from John. All of them. Like all the ones I like come from John.
Yeah.
And all this mystical shit comes from John. You don't see that in Matthew, Mark, Luke.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just not as explicit,
Yeah.
I think
there's
I think the gospel is pretty mystical, all four of them.
Yeah.
But I definitely understand what you mean about John. I mean, John kind of has a reputation.
Do you think that it's an interesting framing of this verse when I bring up the Trinity and I say that the Catholic or Orthodox understanding of God is the Trinity, God in three persons, but they share an identity, and that Jesus himself is saying somehow he's inserting human beings, at least praying that human beings will become a part of that Trinity?
What? I'm sorry. What was the question about that?
It's strange, the framing of humanity belonging to the Trinity. Like that's just, have you ever, is that what he's saying? And have you ever considered that? Because
I mean, I think that the Orthodox doctrine of theosis is kind of like right in line with that.
It is.
Not everyone is going to make it to that.
Yep.
But the people who have been able to attain it, I feel like they are closer to bridging that gap between us being mere manifestations of God and us like being God, like, the saints, those kind of people who have achieved that theosis, that those are the people who are closest to that. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like that is not something that, like, there's this idea that we're all God and we just have to realize that, but I don't think that's true. I don't think it's as easy as just realizing it.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's definitely not. What it means to realize that you're God is not the same thing as to realize that you've lost your keys.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm hungry right now.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you make a good point about the apotheosis thing, but the idea that doesn't exist in any other Christian denomination other than the Orthodox is curious. Because when you read this, man, it's like, but even in that context, in the Orthodox context, to say that it's possible through discipline and grace and all that to become God. And this passage basically would suggest that in that apotheosis, you join the Trinity.
Yeah.
Buddy, man, that is a strange thing. I just wonder like what a Catholic priest or an Orthodox priest would say about that idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So those are the two that I would be most interested in talking to, the Orthodox much more than the Catholic. But I really have no interest at all in what a Protestant would have to say about that. It's like they're so lost.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And I mean, there are some denominations of Protestantism that I appreciate more than others, for sure. But yeah, even the ones that I have the most respect for, they just seem like they're completely lost.
Yeah, well, this passage here where Jesus says that he prays humanity who becomes one with God is a good segue into that stormy waters thing. I don't have much to say about it, but so Kyle recommended a podcast to me, which was Pete Quinones, who he's brought up many, many times. I just never really gave him any time. I just never did.
You've listened to a few of his
episodes. But it's been a while anyway.
Yeah.
So, but he had a guy on named Stormy Waters. Kyle thought, oh, this is up Chris's alley. So he sent it to me. And when I listened to it, he gives this analogy where he's trying to describe, I don't know if he's describing his concept of God or if he's describing some historical idea, but he's talking about people who see God and the relationship between God and themselves as a sea sponge. He's like, imagine a sea sponge. A sea sponge is a being that exists in the ocean. Couldn't exist without the ocean. The ocean gave it birth. But it's permeable and it's filled with the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a thing distinct from the ocean, but it exists only because of the ocean and it's filled with the ocean. And this analogy was the concept of the relationship between God and creation, or God and yourself as a human being. You are a sea sponge existing in God, filled with God, distinct from God, but not really.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just like, fucking brilliant, man. That was brilliant.
Yeah. I thought that it was interesting that they started that episode out by talking a lot about like remote viewing and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very interesting, you know, because in this like idea that everything is one, it would make sense that we should be able to like project like that. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't seem completely ridiculous if that is the way that you think about things.
Yeah.
And just like the idea that the government sank a lot of time and energy into it, and now they release like movies and stuff that make it seem like it was silly. You know, I just feel like they're like trying to throw people off. Be like, this was stupid. Look at how stupid this was. We're not doing this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that was interesting. That the whole thing about like near-death experiences, altered states of consciousness, and the example of remote viewing, they all have something in common. There's something about that that's like different types of the same thing. People feel like they have the ability to sort of detach from their body, that they exist in a way that's disembodied, like they're not attached to their body anymore, but they still exist. Like there's something that exists in them that isn't physical.
Yeah.
And this happens in near-death experiences. It happens in these out-of-body experiences that the FBI or the CIA or whoever it was were doing. And altered states of consciousness. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I did that episode on the gateway process. Remember that?
Yeah.
Where that was about one of those government programs.
Yeah.
It's interesting, man. It's like there isn't, other than like are you being used to it, there's no reason why our consciousness is limited to our physical bodies. Like we are so used to the fact that I can only extend as far as my fingertips.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I don't have any control over what's out there. There's something about these out-of-body experiences that seems to be an expansion of that. It's like, imagine you flip a switch and now it's not just the end of my fingertips that I feel like belong to me, but it's all the way to the edge of the cosmos. There's all the way to the whatever.
Yeah.
You know, this expansion of consciousness. And what's weird about that is it explains a lot of religious stories, but it also explains things like entanglement, quantum entanglement. How can one particle over here know what the state this is in when the other particle is fucking across the cosmos? Well, if it's all one thing, you know, it's just a lot of interesting shit surrounding an expansion of consciousness and just what consciousness is. We could talk about this forever.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely interesting stuff. And it's like, I don't know. It's just easy to imagine that there is like some level of truth to it, you know, for me anyway. So, you know, I know a lot of people like Neil deGrasse Tyson would probably be like, that's ridiculous. You know, you're stardust and you can't sense the other stardust out there. It's, you know,
dude, I hate that guy more every time I hear him.
Yeah. I can't stand him.
He's supposed to be a public speaker promoting science. And he like seems to be a hunter for seeking and destroying people's curiosity.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. I think it was in that Stormy Waters episode. He was talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he said he's basically like a fake scientist.
Yeah.
Like he's got degrees and stuff like that, but he's never published any papers. He's never been cited on anything. You know, scientists have to submit their stuff to peer review. He just regurgitates other people's shit all the time, you know?
Exactly.
And the fact that he has become kind of a celebrity is like weird, you know? It's like, I feel like he's been foisted upon people.
Yeah.
And he has, like, there's no reason that he should be as popular as he is, other than he's like constantly brought on TV shows and shit like that.
And like in the same way, like boy bands were manufactured to be huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's a boy band scientist. Sometimes it makes me wonder if Carl Sagan was like that too. But then I think about Carl Sagan was like more of a poet than Neil deGrasse Tyson is too. I think about the fact that Carl Sagan wrote that book that they made into the Jodie Contact, you know, where this scientist who's a materialist scientist goes to another dimension and like rejoins with her dead father, you know? Like, so I think that Carl Sagan was probably on some like higher level shit than Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Do me a favor. Monologue for me. I got a piece so bad.
I do too. You just want to end it? I have to go so bad.
No, I got some more things I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
Why don't you
we'll tag team
you go and I'll monologue?
No, it's all right. You can go. You can go.
All right. I want to talk to you about pre-Islamic Arabia. I want to talk to you about Mel Gibson and Galileo. Be right back.
I like talking about Mel Gibson. Whoa! Holy shit!
Fix that. What was that? Stole my headphones.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to talk about Mel Gibson. I saw some kind of meme about Mel Gibson recently, but I don't think it was like a real thing. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was just a joke. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I'm monologuing about Mel Gibson right now, but he's a good actor. What's my favorite Mel Gibson movie? The Beaver was pretty good. I think my favorite Mel Gibson movie is a movie that he wasn't even in. It was Apocalypto. That was a great movie. And The Passion of the Christ was pretty good too. I heard they're making a sequel to that, and I am definitely curious to see how that's gonna go, if it's even going to get released. I think that they're actually making it though, like it's in production. So I would assume that it's gonna come to fruition eventually. There's definitely a big enough audience for it. I would go see it. I would definitely go see it. I do feel like everyone should go see Nosferatu, though. I think that there's a serious chance that Robert Eggers is a Christian. Combining Nosferatu with that movie, The Witch, he made, it just seems. I think that there's a good chance for sure. But yeah, I highly recommend going to see that. Chris is back.
Yeah, Kevin's also here, so he's going to sit down.
All right.
You go ahead, man. All right. Welcome back, one and all. All right, so I don't know what Kyle was saying while I was peeing, but what do I have? All right, so I was watching Mel Gibson on. My buddy Kevin's here, and he's so thin. You're so skinny, dude. Yeah, whatever. You can sit over here or over here. Where do you want to sit? Yes, come over here. I'll move this shit. All right. Throw these in the garbage next to you, would you? And then I got some more beverages over here if you're interested in that. Okay, well, okay, so I was listening to Mel Gibson on Joe Rogan. If you guys, he was on Rogan before, but it's been a long time, and he was on again. And I feel like Rogan appreciates the same things about Mel Gibson that I do. He immediately started talking to him about Apocalypto. Remember Apocalypto, Kevin? Fucking so good, man. But good for it was different. Like there was no movies like Apocalypto at the time. The only thing you could compare it to was Passion of the Christ, which was Mel Gibson. Mm-hmm. So he's using like like the ancient languages and like the whole like emphasis of the movie was about like emotion, like fear and panic, and like The imagery, you know, was like you didn't have to understand what he was saying. You knew he was like his tribe was getting raided. His wife was hiding in a hole. All of his friends were being murdered. He was trying to survive, and he gets captured and taken to a place where he's going to fucking get his heart cut out. Right? The whole movie. We're talking about Apocalypto.
I was talking about Apocalypto.
Oh, you were? No way. Did you look on here?
No.
Oh, you just randomly?
You said Mel Gibson, and I was talking about Mel Gibson movies that I liked.
Okay. So what I wanted to tell you is did you watch Mel Gibson on Rogan when he was on last time?
No.
So it was good, man. It wasn't great. Mel Gibson seemed like a little bit hopped up, like he was maybe on some kind of amphetamine or something.
Gotcha.
He kept he was pounding water the whole time, and he kept sounding like he was out of breath while he was talking the whole time. But he told the story. He told the story of Apocalypto about how that movie came about, and I was very curious about that. And this is what he told me, and it was what he told me. This is what he told me. He said that he always wanted to make a movie about a chase, and when he became a director, he wanted to do a intense chase movie.
Yeah.
Well, back then it was like a lot of car chases and like speed. You remember, like just stuff like that. But he's like, no. I wanted to do a foot chase, but I wanted to film it like the dramatic car chase, but it'd be a foot chase. That was the origin of Apocalypto. It had nothing to do with his interest in history or the Mayans or any of that. He just wanted to make a movie about a chase that was intense, but nobody had done a foot chase. So he wanted to do a foot chase.
It's pretty interesting.
So he said that. What else did he say? He said, there was more to that, man, but I can't remember. I'm testing my memory.
I know he said ivermectin cures cancer. People were pretty mad about that.
Well, he's not the only guy that I've heard say that. I think it might have been even the mushroom guy,
Paul Stamets.
He's talking about people who have cancer, like it's a high percentage of them have fungal infections in their blood.
Mm.
And if you give these people, the claim is, if you give these people antifungal medicine, that they will, their cancer will be cured. And that's the kind of shit Mel Gibson was talking about.
Yeah. Well, imagine that he pissed a bunch of people off.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Yeah.
People think it's irresponsible, you know.
Joe doesn't care no more.
Joe doesn't care. Joe doesn't give a fuck.
All right, so I know we want to try to wrap this up. Before I bring up this thing about pre-Islamic Arabia.
Shit, I peed. We don't have to wrap it up at all.
Well,
I know we do.
We got like 9 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, did I tell you about this thing called the overview effect last time we talked?
Don't think so.
So this is something that astronauts that are in orbit around the Earth will talk about, and it's happened so much that they have a name for it.
The overview.
The overview effect. So it's something like that all with the universe, one with the universe mystical experience that I talk about. Mm. And there's different ways that you can achieve it. We know you can achieve it through psychedelic drug use. We know you can achieve it through deep meditation or sensory deprivation or whatever these different methods are.
And also by going to space.
Also by seeing the Earth from space.
Yeah.
By not seeing a photo of the Earth from space, being above the Earth, looking down at it. It's called the overview effect. And apparently there's a whole shitload of astronauts that have had this experience where they're looking out of the window of the spacecraft and they're seeing the Earth floating into space. And they have this feeling that's like this mystical experience. It's like their sense of self goes away and they imagine that they're one with this thing, that this whole majestic wholeness that they're looking at, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
The fact that it can be elicited all these different ways, including seeing the Earth from space. How is that evolutionarily developed, right? How is it evolutionary developed? Have human beings ever been able to go into space and turn around and look at the Earth? It's never happened. So
some might say that they still can't, but
unless the out of body experience is a real thing.
Yeah,
then maybe it's a real thing.
Could be. I just a lot of times with stuff like that, with like these astronauts who are just scientists going up into space and looking back down at the world. And I just wonder, like, when they have this realization that everything is one, what are the entailments of that? Like, what does that mean for us? You know, because a lot of times I feel like I don't agree with their prescriptions, you know?
People that, what do you mean?
Like a lot of times We've had this conversation about a lot of times the people who agree with you about this kind of stuff are stupid and unserious people.
You mean the people that think if everything is one and all's the same, then I can do whatever I want, or
Yeah,
I can control the world?
or like there's a ton of different ways to apply it in ways that I think are inappropriate. Like we were talking about immigration earlier. Well, it's like if we're all one, then who am I to say that you're not allowed to come into this country? And I don't. I think that's a stupid way of thinking. You don't see that that seems like a logical leap to you.
Say it again. I was doing something.
These people who believe that everything is one, that we're all one, that because we are all one, I have no cause to prevent people from crossing an imaginary border.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I can see how people would think that too. And I think it's a stupid way of thinking. Like in practicality,
yeah,
I think it's dumb. And I don't think it's valuable at all.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's where it's valuable is strictly from a moral piece. And it's not like when Jesus said in the Gospels to treat others the way you want to be treated, more or less the golden rule. I mean, that's the same instinct. That's the takeaway from the mystical experience. If there's nothing different between you and I, then I should treat you like you're myself. And so you don't have to have a mystical experience to know what Jesus said in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that the golden rule is, it's in Christianity, but I also think that it's one of the parts of Christianity that are like hijacked for like nefarious ends. It's like that thing that constantly gets brought up in debates by people, like particularly Andrew Wilson, that like what people want is subjective, and you might want something completely different than I do, and just because you want it doesn't mean that I want it. And I'm very, because I do think that there is some level of like we are all one. I think that there's obviously some truth to that. I think that people take advantage of that and like try to shoehorn other things that are not necessarily it's not necessary for them to be involved.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could look at somebody like the Pharaoh or the Caesar who says, I am God. And I'm like, right on, man. But what he's doing with that information is, subjugating a country of people. That's not right. That's not what it means.
Yeah.
All right. Last topic of the day. I was watching this documentary about Arabia before Islam, and I was kind of blown away by what I learned. So apparently, there's all these tribes. You know how like the Arab world is, very much still tribal, and it's like a deep, deep history of being like that. Big family groups and nomadic tribes moving around the Arabian Peninsula and all that. Well, apparently, the tribes that were their homeland was this whole area around Mecca, what would become Mecca, and all that area. Before Muhammad, there was these Arab tribes there called the I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but the Aus, A-U-S, and the Khazraj, K-H-A-Z-R-A-J. These were Arab tribes that lived in this area, tribes, right? But then there were three other tribes that were part of the mix: the Nadhir, the Kainuga, and the Koraza. All three of those tribes, Jewish. So the families that owned the land around what would become Mecca, where the Kaaba was, were both Arab and Jewish. And they were like I don't know what the word means exactly. So this is my ignorance. But the Bedouins, right? Whatever that means. I don't know what it means exactly. But the Bedouins that lived in the desert in that area, some of them were Arabs and some of them were Jews. And they say that they came originally from the north, from the area that was Judea, but that they were living with other Semitic tribes, people in that area, and that there wasn't really a significant distinction between the Jewish tribes. They spoke Arabic. They said they have like a very unique Jewish type of Arabic that they speak. But their names were Arabic. They lived with the Arabs in the desert for generations and generations. And I had no idea. I never heard of this. This was before Muhammad came.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about that before. That Arabs and Jews were coexisting in that area before Islam.
Yes, but I thought that was limited to like Israel, Palestine. I did not realize that was Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And then if you go down to the southern tip of Saudi Arabia, where like Yemen is in that area, right across the Red Sea from Ethiopia, basically. And the kingdom of Aksum, Ethiopia is like ancient Jewish and Christian country. Like there's, it was like an early Christian group there, and then an early Jewish group there, and then an early Christian group. And they were like, there was like not an empire, but like a kingdom, a Christian kingdom in Aksum. And they came over into Yemen and took over. So you have the south of Saudi Arabia that's a Christian empire. And then all these Jewish tribes living among the Arabs all across Saudi Arabia. And I never knew that.
Yeah.
And so what you have is like Christians and Jews in the Arabian plateau paving the way for Muhammad.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have all these polytheistic tribes worshiping all these different gods. Hubal was like the main god of like the area that where Mecca is. And there's like 360 deity statues inside the Kaaba.
Mm-hmm.
And you got these Christians and Jews coming in and living with the Arabs and telling them there's only one God. And then Muhammad comes.
Yeah. Did you by any chance listen to that 200 Years Together episode that I sent you?
That was the second one?
Yes.
I haven't got to it yet. The Solzhenitsyn one?
Yeah.
No, I haven't got to it yet.
They have Pete and the guy who did that episode with, have 3 of those episodes out now, and they're very interesting. It's a history from, like, I forget when exactly the date is, but let's say that it's like the 1500s to the 1700s, something like that. Although it's got to be later than that. But anyways, it's the history of the Jews and the Russians living together in Russia and, Ukraine and that area. And one of the things that the guy said is that Islam is like largely birthed from Judaism.
See, that's what I'm getting at, man. It's like, you remember when I was talking about that video I saw where it was like a Christian that was in Israel and it was interviewing Jewish people on the street, like young people on the street, and it was asking them, if you had to choose, would you pray in a mosque or a church? And all of the Jews said, without exception, I would rather pray in the mosque because at least the Muslims worship the same God as us.
Yeah.
And so the idea that the Jews and the Christians paved the way, like Islam, it seems to me that Islam would not have had a leg to stand on among all of the polytheistic tribes that had been polytheists for thousands of years if the Jews and Christians hadn't been there for hundreds of years, whittling them down,
Yeah.
Like if it wasn't for the Jews and Christians in Saudi Arabia, Islam may not have ever been an empire. It might not have ever been a world religion.
Yeah. Now it's
fascinating.
Like the second biggest one.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that those are the original Jewish people, and I think a lot of people would say that the people who live in Israel now and consider themselves the Jewish people have like a lot less in common with those people than the people today would like you to think,
There's no doubt, man.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that first episode, the one that I sent you, has to do with the Jewish people, and, the diaspora, them moving into other areas, and the Jewish, like, religion and just like way of thinking specifically, that being adopted by other governments, and just that there's a lot of change. It's not the same group of people, you know.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of reason to believe that the Jewish people of today are the Jewish people that like Jesus came from, you know.
Right.
So
Well, for sure.
they're very different.
Yeah, man, it's interesting. I wonder if like the tribes that lived in Saudi Arabia, were any of those tribes Canaanites? Like the Jews, like
That's a
the,
good question.
you know what I mean? Were any of them? I don't know. Kevin? All right, let's see. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll just end with this because I didn't find any place to stick this in, so we'll just end on this. This is a quote that I found. I didn't find. Somebody brought it to my attention from Galileo, and it's very surprising to me that Galileo said this. You remember the controversy around Galileo? He was like on house arrest for the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't allowed to leave his house. Galileo said, "I think that tastes, odors, colors, and so on reside in consciousness. Hence, if the living creatures were removed, all these qualities would be wiped away and annihilated." So Galileo's kind of like a panpsychist. He's kind of like he's basically saying if human beings didn't exist, there would be no such thing as tastes or colors or odors, that all of the things that we experience, that we think the world is made of, the qualities of the world, all of that exists in here and not out there. How fucking cool is that?
It's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely pretty interesting. You know, I didn't know Galileo said that.
Me either, man. The only other thing I wanted to talk to you about was Wes Huff on Rogan's podcast and Zuckerberg on Rogan's podcast.
Didn't watch that either. I mean, I heard some stuff about both of them.
It's pretty much all been said in the meme world. You've pretty much already gathered.
I do wonder about like Zuckerberg. I just feel like these people who have done things that I like seriously disagree with and like have a serious problem with, they go on a podcast and they like say some nice things about, oh, we're going to get rid of fact checking and we're just going to have community notes now. And like everybody's like, oh, Zuckerberg's cool now. It's like, yeah, I don't fucking trust Zuckerberg as far as I could throw his little ass.
Yeah, I don't either. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I have a little bit of that for Elon too.
Yeah, I started to as well. But I'm always afraid that like I'm suspicious of my own assumptions. So I think that if I'm becoming suspicious of Elon, it's because I'm hearing other people say that they're suspicious of Elon, and I don't like that. I don't want to be persuaded by the common opinion or whatever's bouncing around the internet. But this idea like that Biden was talking about in his farewell speech, that there's an oligarchy forming, and what he meant by that is Elon Musk. Who else could he possibly have meant by that?
Well, I mean, there are other people too. It's like Peter Thiel. There's like a few, you know, but the thing that's a joke to me is that there wasn't an oligarchy when you were in office and when Barack was in Trump before, you know. It's like the thing about democracy is that there are oligarchies. Like Russia was an oligarchy before Putin came in and like put the oligarchs in, you know. It's like Putin gave them an ultimatum. He said, you can be billionaires, you know, you can still do all the stuff you're doing, but when it comes to matters of state, you don't have a say in that anymore. And if you feel like you need to, and that's a problem for you, then I'm going to kill you. You know, like things are not going to go well for you. And a lot of them left. A lot of them were Jewish billionaires. They got out of there, went to New York. That dude, Konstantin Kisin, he's the son of a Jewish oligarch who left Russia.
I did not know that.
So
I did not know that.
Yeah, so there are obvious oligarchies where the people who are living in it know, oh, these billionaires are running things. You know, like we have a government and the government does things, but they're not going to do anything that is against the oligarchs. And then you get Putin who's like, fuck off, you know. And then you have like a different kind of thing. And there's still like a level of oligarchy to it, I'm sure. I'm sure there are still powerful people who have like serious influence. But in America and in places that are democracies, you still have an oligarchy. There are still very powerful people, and if they don't want something to happen, it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. And if they want something to happen, it's likely that that thing's going to happen. But we have this like veneer of democracy of like all the little guys being able to vote, and they think that they have some, they think that the milkman, the guy who runs mail for the post office decides that he wants to be a congressperson, and he like has a grassroots movement and becomes a congressperson, that he has some kind of influence over what the oligarchs are doing, and he doesn't.
Yeah. I can see that with a figure like Elon Musk, because he like bought Twitter, changed the course of the election, perhaps in doing that. Toyed around with the idea of buying MSNBC, which is fucking amazing. But I'm only saying that because in this case, the powerful rich person is doing something I like.
Yeah.
What happens when the powerful rich person is doing something I don't like?
Well, that's kind of where I've been at politically for a while at this point. Is I accept at this point that it's never not going. Power is never not going to reside in the hands of a few people who are, able to seize power. That if it came down to like me and Elon Musk vying for power, Elon Musk is going to win. I've accepted that that's never going to change. I don't think it's possible for that to change. I think that's the nature of reality. I just want the people who are the oligarchs in power to be like more on my side, which they haven't been for a long time.
Yeah. And I'm okay with them being on my side. And it's just a dangerous thing because it's, whichever way the wind blows, I hope that someone like Elon Musk is principled. He seems to be principled, but you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like their principles almost are not as important. I don't know what I'm trying to say, or like how I'm trying to say it. Like, I don't really care about their principles in a lot of ways. I care that they like leave me alone and like let me live a life that I find to be fulfilling,
Said like a libertarian,
I guess. It's not very libertarian because I also think that like an entailment of that is that I get to make a lot of the rules around me, and a lot of my rules you wouldn't like that much, So it would be a lot of my rules would be very unlibertarian, and I think that that's good. I think that given if like you could give me 100 years and some like anarcho-capitalist 100 years, I think that you would be much happier to live in my place than Somalia.
Yeah, I agree. All right. The only other thing I wrote down that I wanted to talk to you about, which I don't think we're going to have a chance to get into thoroughly, so I'll just tee this up for later, is I wondered about, I was been listening to these debates with like between Christians and Muslims for a lot recently. And one of the things that they'll harp on the Muslims about is the fact that they marry girls very young, the fact that Muhammad married Aisha when she was very young, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I started to wonder if morality is something that evolves like, creatures evolve. Like there's a survival of the fittest with morality. And after a while, people realize this group of people's fucking children, this group of people's not. And like there's a survival of the fittest sort of thing happening between them, where the people who aren't fucking children are going to, succeed, where the people who are going to fail. And that there may be some sort of history to all of like the religious history about the way we think about ourselves in relationship to God and each other, and how morality has developed. Think about things like slavery and the dialectic and all that. It's like, is there a process of sort of evolution of ideas that's going on, and that also applies to our morality? And that people who adopt an inferior morality. Like there's just some kind of weird like eugenics sort of a conversation that entails about if morality is evolving like a survival of the fittest sort of situation.
Yeah.
Do we have a responsibility of?
I definitely think that you can pick a bad moral code, for sure. And that if you like base your society around a moral code that is not as good, then societies that have a better one will probably do better than you do. I think that implying that morality can evolve, I think that it like implies that morality is not objective, and I believe that it is.
It could be that, or it could be that the evolution is constantly towards the objective, right?
Okay.
Like,
yeah, no, I could see that.
See what I mean? Like getting closer and closer to the thing, which I think that rings a little bit more true to me. It's like, sometimes it takes time to realize that you're doing something wrong.
Put like that, I definitely, I'm with you. I like that.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're out of time, folks. That's about it. What do you want to say?
2 hours on the dot.
You got anything else to say?
No, not really.
All right, you guys, like and subscribe, dingle the dangles, all the things that we never tell you to do. Tell your friends. We're trying to.
You can't follow me at Base Fat Chat anymore because.
Oh yeah.
Elon's a dick.
Because of Elon's dick. All right, love you guys. See ya.